RTO here. Welcome to another week on the channel. And this week we start off with part 2 of the Rick Wakeman story. And we're going to look at the 1980s albums of Rick Wakeman this week. Quite a mixed bag here. We did some sort of progressive rock albums, he did some piano albums, he did soundtracks. Right mixture. During the 80s he released 12 albums in all. So we will start at number 12, and this is the 4th album of the decade, released in 1983, and it's called The Cost of Living. On here it's got Rick Wakeman, of course, Hereward Kay on vocals, Jackie McCauley on guitar, John Gustafson on the bass. Narration was done by Robert Powell. Tony Fernandez was on drums and percussion. First track on this album is called Tweety. It's only a little thing. It's got some nice little tempo. It sounds like the tapes run out. It just ends. Very clever. And then there's a track called Pandemonia. Really like this. It's quite rocky. It's got some great riffs in here, some great keyboard, of course. Really good. Gone but not forgotten. This is quite pleasant. It's a really nice piano piece from Rick, which is pretty good. One for the Road. It's one of these sort of 80s funky tracks. Bit of 80s production on there, but hey ho, everyone done it. Bedtime Stories, another really nice piece of piano work here from Rick. It gets weird with the children insert on it, but yeah, it's all right. Happening Man, far too 80s for me. You know, even Rick was sucked into the 80s thing. Then we got Shakespeare's Run, my favourite track on this album. It's got a bit more prog in this. The guitar works good, and Rick's piano is fantastic on that. Monkey Nuts. Musically it's good, but the vocals are just terrible. Then we get Eulogy, written in a courtyard country churchyard. This is okay. It's a nice background, but you've got Robert Powell narrating. It's more like a poem done to music. I don't know if I'm really into this, but what is nice is that great narration voice of Robert Powell. I mean, I've watched so much stuff with Robert Powell narrating. He did a really good series on the Second World War, and listening to the way he used to describe things is just amazing. I do like Robert Powell as a narrator. It's the way albums. It's a bit of a mix bag on here. The vocals are not very good, and it sort of spoils the album. It's an album that I don't go too much, I'm afraid. So I'm going to give this one an RTO ranking of 4.5. Okay, then coming in at number 11. This is a soundtrack. It's the 6th album of the decade, from 1984, and it's called Crimes of Passion. It's a film directed by Ken Russell, and it starred Kathleen Turner, Anthony Perkins, and Rick did the soundtrack. First track is called It's a Lovely Life. Quite rocky in places, lots of keyboards, even the vocal sounds good on this. I don't know who's plays on it because there's not much information about this album. And I mean, I had to listen to it on YouTube because it's very, very rare. Eastern Shadows, I like some of the keyboard in this. Quite good track, lots of elements of progressive rock in it as well, but it's very electronic. Joanna, the start of this reminds me of something that could have come off Journey to the Centre of the Earth or the King Arthur or Henry VIII. It's a really good piece. The Stretch, very 80s sounding. It's got some interesting keyboard swirls on it, that's much. Policeman's Ball, very dated sounding, I suppose. It's got a nice piece of saxophone in it though, it's pretty good. Then there's a track called Stacks, another track that's got some nice sax. It all rhymes. Yeah, it's not too bad. Take It in Hand, very 80s orientated, got a good strong riff on. Paradise Lost. My favourite track on here, I just like the guitars, and there's a gentle bit of piano here from Rick, really good. The Box, a nice little rocker here. It's got lots of 80s production of it, of course, but it still rocks a little bit. Web of Love, again I like this piece, it's a little instrumental. Then we get Dangerous Woman, vocals done here done by Maggie Bell. Some great vocals from Maggie, the saxophones are good, and it's just that 80s sound. It's a soundtrack. I'm not a great lover of Ken Russell, so I've never watched this film. I think the only ones I really like that he ever sort of got involved with Ken Russell were the Death Wish films with Charles Bronson. But there are some really good little bits of music on this, so I'm going to give this one an RTO ranking of 5 out of 10. Okay, then coming in at number 10 we have another soundtrack album. It's released in 1981. I think this is one of the first albums he put out in the 80s, and it's from a film called The Burning. Again, there's not much information on this, so I don't know who's plays on it, except Rick Wakeman, of course. The first one is called The Theme from The Burning. This starts off with some gentle music, and then it goes into a right medley, some great drums, and the pianos are really good. The next track is called The Chase Continues, Pose Plain. Great keyboard from Rick on this. It gets very high and high pitched at times, but it's quite incredible. Variations on the Fire. Suddenly you get some keyboards with some lots of them bends you get on the keyboards. You know, that little button at the side of the keyboard. It goes, woo! Really interesting. I don't know what's going on in the film because I've never seen this film. Sheer Terror and More. Now this is a very frantic, I don't know what's going on in the film, but it feels like there's a bit of panic and terror going on. But Rick seems to have got what the director wanted. It really is good. The Burning, the end title film, probably the shortest, but it's probably one of my favourite pieces. There's some really nice keyboard runs on this. Then we get a track called Campfire Story. Someone telling a bit of a story. It's a little bit keyboard. If you don't know what the film's about, it's really hard to understand her. The Fire, one of these weird tracks with lots of high pitch, not good on the ears keyboards. Doing it, certainly an 80s sort of folk rock sound, a lot of strong keyboard swells in it. Devil's Creek Breakdown, there's some banjo in this. Pedal steel guitar as well, it's okay. Then we get The Chase, very interesting keyboard swirls on this one. And then Sheer Terror is just lots of noises, I don't know what that's all about. As I've always said about soundtracks, you just don't know what's going on if you have never seen the film. But there are some really good little bits in this, and I'll give this one an RTO ranking of 5.5. Okay, then coming in at number 9, go to 1982 now, to the third album of the decade, and it's called A Rock and Roll Prophet. On here we've got Rick Wakeman on the keyboards, vocals and production, Liam Norbert on backing vocals, and Gaston Barma percussion. I'm So Straight, I'm a Weirdo is the opening track, released as a UK single. Early new wave, as weird as you like, and I don't really rate Rick Wakeman as a singer, sorry. The Dragon, don't mind this track, it's got some really nice keyboard swirls from Rick, pretty good on this. Then we get a track called Dark, very eerie keyboards, one of my favourite bits on here. It really is interesting, put it that way. Maybe 80, Tell it's very early 80s here. Very dated sound, but I do appreciate what he was doing at the time, because all the instruments he was using were probably the latest technology. Then we get a track called Early Warning. My favourite track. It's got a bit of an Ultravox feel to this in places. The keyboard sound is very sort of what Ultravox were doing at the time. Probably why I like it. Spire 55, a really good track. I love the keyboard. It's just classic sounding Rick Wakeman. Get little bits of choral in this. Really good. Do You Believe in Fairies? It's okay. I don't like the vocal on it. Rick, stick to playing the keyboards, mate. Then we get the title track, Rock and Roll Prophet, the last track on the album. Interesting track. It's got a real progressive feel to it, and I don't mind that track at all. I would say this is quite a guilty pleasure for me from the 80s from Rick Wakeman. I like listening to this. It's got some nice quirky tracks on it. It's one of them you put on the background as well. So I'm going to give this an RTO ranking of 5.8. Okay, coming in at number 8. This is an album from 1989 now, the 12th one he released in the 80s. And it's an album that belongs to a trilogy of 3. The trilogy is Country Airs, Sea Airs and Night Airs. This one is the second one, Night Airs, and it's basically Rick at the piano. I love listening to Rick at the piano. He's such a great pianist. So the first one is called Harbour Lights. This is a lovely piece of music. The delicate touches on the piano just proves what a great pianist that Rick is. The Pirate. It's just very hard to really rank and discuss these albums. They're all good in their own sort of ways. Sorry, I'm a bit of a problem with my mouth today. It's a Sunday afternoon piece. I do listen to this album quite a lot, especially when I'm doing research for this channel, you know, when I'm putting things together. I just like this in the background. It's very nice. Storm Clouds. It's relaxing, but you've got this feeling of the gathering of storm clouds and how Rick interpreted it. Then we got Lost at Sea. This is a very soft piece, very sombre, but a nice piece. The Mermaid. This is quite angelic, the way that Rick plays this one. Lovely stuff. Then we get Waves. Now, just like Vangelis, Rick Wakeman can interpret things. This is called Waves, and you can feel that the waves are coming into the shore. Really good little song that is. The Fisherman. It's just lovely and relaxing. Flying Fish. Here we go again. We can imagine the fish jumping out in the sea. You can feel it, the textures on the piano. That you know when there's supposed to be fish jumping out in the sea, because it just changes. Then we get my favourite piece on here. It's called the Mary Celeste. It's such a it's stirring, lovely piece. Time and Tide, another gentle, relaxing piece of piano. The Lone Sailor. There's not much more you can say about this. That it's really nice and relaxing. The Sailor's Lament. This has got a real classical piano. It's the sort of thing, you know, Mozart and that sort of, from that sort of period of time. Absolutely stunning little piece of music. I know there's not a lot of people that are not into this style of music, but I love listening to Rick at the piano on his own. It's just amazing to listen to, and it's so relaxing. So I'm going to give this one an RTO ranking of 6 out of 10. Okay, then coming in at number 7, we've got the 9th album from the 80s. It's called The Gospels. All based on the Bible. Narrator is Robert Powell, and we got some sort of backing vocals from Ramon Ramirez and the Eton College Choir. Now, the thing is, it's just lots of synthesizer noises, and it's Robert Powell just reading from the Bible. So the first one is, I'm not going to go through all this because it's just the Bible to music, basically. So you've got the Gospel according to St. Matthew, split into 4 pieces. You've got the baptism, the welcoming, the Sermon on the Mount, the Lord's Prayer. Then you've got St. Mark's Gospel, and on here we've got the way, the road to Jerusalem, trial and error, Galilee. Then we've got the Luke, you've got the gift, the magnificent welcome, the star power. And then in John we've got the word, the hour, the children of mine, the last verse. Very difficult to rank this individually. It's an album that I don't really listen to, in all honesty. But I understand. I mean, Rick's quite religious, and I respect that. And I just found, I have listened to this because obviously I wanted to listen to it again for this purpose. I just found listening to Robert Powell is quite addictive. I mean, I listen to this at night when you know when you go. I like to have something on when I go to bed, and I listen to this like that because I couldn't listen to it during the day. And I sort of get the idea, and I think it was very clever. But it's not for me. But I'm going to give it an RTO ranking of 6.5 because I thought it was very clever what he done. Okay, then coming in at number 6, we've got this is a rock album from 1985. It's the 7th one. It's called Silent Nights. On here is Rick, Tony Fernandez, ever on the drums, Chaz Cronk on bass guitar, Rick Fenn from 10cc and Mike Oldfield on guitars, Bimbo Alcock on saxophone, and lead vocals are done by a chap called Gordon Neville. First track on here is called Take 'Em All You Know. Very pleasant. Keyboards are alright. Then we got the opening line. Another highlight of this album is Rick Fenn's guitar work. Great guitar player. It's a really strong track. He works well with Rick on that. The opera. Then we get The Sister. It's alright. Not one of the best tracks on the album for me. Then we get Man's Best Friend. Really good. It's a very Mike Oldfield sort of sound. The guitar work is really good. Glory Boys, some great guitar work here from Rick Fenn. Works well again with Rick. Title track's the next track. Called Silent Nights. Definitely one of my favourites on that track. It reminds me of some the sound from that. Remember that super group called GTR? It's got that sort of thing. Great vocal on that. Ghost Ride of a Rock and Roll Star. Another song that Rick sings on. Don't sing. The highlight of this though is Rick Fenn's guitar work. Then we got The Dancer. That's solid enough. Then we got my favourite track on here called Eglin Mansions. There's some lovely piano work on this from Rick Wakeman. You got some delicate work from Rick Fenn on the guitars. Last track on the album is called That's Who I Am. Solid track, nothing wrong with that. Yeah, nothing wrong with this. It's just an 80s album with some of that 80s sound. But you've got some really good keyboard work from Rick Wakeman added with Rick Fenn on the guitars. But he should just stop singing. Just concentrate on the ivories. But I'm going to give that one an RTO ranking of 7 out of 10. Because it has got some decent stuff on it. Okay, then coming in at number 5, sorry, is an album that came out in 1982, and it's called Goal, which is the soundtrack to the official FIFA World Cup film. It's music and narrated by Mr. Sean Connery. And I've actually seen this, so I sort of know how these pieces work. First track is called International Flag. Some nice keyboard pieces here, just flowing well, really good. Then the dove at the opening ceremony. Yeah, it's a nice piece. It just shows about the doves and all sorts. The opening ceremony really fits in what was going on. The Wayward Spirit. Rich, great little pieces of piano on here. Great stuff. Then we get Latin Reel, which is a theme from Goal. It's quite interesting. It's a lovely piece of work. Nice keyboards. Red Island, I love the choral on this. It's got choral, it's got Spanish guitar. Really moved because obviously the World Cup was in Spain. Very, very good. Then we get Spanish Holiday. You got real Spanish feel to this, that crisp Spanish guitars. Really, you expect someone to start giving it all that with the maracas or the castanets. Really good. Then we got No Possible. It's a jazz element to it. Still really good. Shadows, it's alright. Then we get Black Pearls, which is one of my favourite pieces on this. It's got a lot of like a harpsichord sound with piano working together. Really good. Frustration, that's okay. It's just frustrating things that happen in football matches, and this where this is in the film, it does. Unless if you haven't seen it, you don't know what's going on. But I do get how that bit works. Spanish montage. Love the Spanish guitar in this again. Nice guitar work and piano from Rick. Then we got the title track Goal. I love that combination of the piano and the 80s sounding keyboard. It sort of works. I've seen this, so I sort of get an idea of this one. Sean Connery as a narrator is pretty cool as well. And I'm going to give this one an RTO ranking of 7.5. Okay, then coming at number 4, we've got an album from 1987. It was the 9th one, and it's called The Family Album. And Rick actually wrote a song about every member of his family, his parents, even his computer. But years later, after divorcing his wife Nina and the passing of his parents, Rick said he no longer listened to this album because it brings him sadness. So this is all about Rick's life at the time. So the first track is called Black Beauty, which is in brackets Black Rabbit. So this is obviously about a rabbit. It's got lovely sounds and atmosphere, and it sort of captures how rabbits' nose twitches and they bob around everywhere. Very clever little piece. Then there's a track called Adam, which is obviously one of Rick's sons. It's a lovely piece of music, some nice keyboard work on it. Then there's a track called Gemma, which is Rick and Nina's daughter. A quirky bit of piano and electronic piano. Really nice, gentle piece. Benjamin, Rick's third son. I love this. It's got that really nice balance. It's got a good balance of piano and keyboards. Really good. Oscar, another of Rick's children with Nina. Quite moving. I love the arrangement on this. The keyboards and strings work well together. Then we got Oliver, which is his first son. It's got some yes to this. It's really good. Now we've got a track called Nina, which is Rick's wife at the time. When I first heard this, because I've never played this album, in all honesty, I thought I recognise this bit of music. I thought I've heard little bits of this. And I said, I'm sure I've heard it on a Yes album. So I went back through some of the Yes. And it wasn't anything I thought. But then I looked into it. And I found out that it was from the Anderson, Bruford, Wakeman and Howell album. And the main melody for Nina is actually what they used on the song The Meeting on that album. So I knew I'd heard it somewhere. And it bugged me and I had to find out. And I like that track anyway. And this, you can see where the elements of that song The Meeting came from. This very, very good. Then we get a track called Wiggles, which is about a black and white rabbit. Again, it's that rabbit jumping around type thing. Then the next track is called Chloe, which is about a German Shepherd dog. This has got that magnificent, slender and thing about grace of a Alsatian. Really magnificent piece. Then we get a track called Cookie, which is about the cat. Again, it's got that thing about how the cat sort of relaxes, jumps around sort of thing. Then we get a track called Tilly, which is about a golden retriever. A nice relaxing piece of music. I mean, golden retrievers just sort of lying around chilling all day. Then we get Mum. That's a very nice pleasant piece again. Then Dad. Again, these two tracks work quite well together. Mum and Dad sort of flow into each other. The Day After the Fair. Now, I don't know where this comes in. I don't know if it's about things happening, but there's some nice piano in here. The electric piano sounds good. Then there's a track called Macintosh. So obviously this is about his computer. He must be the first person to dedicate a piece of music to his computer. But it's quite pleasant. It's got these quirky little bits in it, you know, representing computers, I suppose. Now, I really like this album. I'd never heard it. And I've now put it in my Rick Wakeman catalogue. I think it just really is pleasant. So I'm going to give this an RTO ranking of 7.6. Okay, then coming at number 3. Remember we saw about there that trilogy, the Night Airs, Country Airs and everything, the Sea Airs. This is the first one, Country Airs, that was released in 1986, and it's the 8th of the decade. Again, it's all about Rick and a piano and giving atmosphere. First track is Lakeland Walks. Some really gentle touches on this. You know, it feels like you are walking through by a lake, and yeah, works quite well. Wild Moors. The way that he plays this, it feels like you are on a moor, like Dartmoor or something. Have you ever walked on there and that wind's howling and you have to like that if you get caught in the wind? Really reflects that. Harvest Festival. This is quite relaxing. It's a piece that's full of joy. Really good. The Glade sort of carries on in the same sort of vein as Harvest Festival. Really good. Dandelion Dreams. It feels like you are walking through a field of dandelions in the sun. Really, really nice piece of music. Ducks and Drakes. Now, this is, although it's my favourite piece, although it's on a piano, it's quite progressive piano. It's really good. It sounds like it does belong on a proper prog track. Green to Gold. This is a very gentle piece, quite moving as well. Stepping Stones. I love the melody on this one. You've got like a lead part and a little dramatic piece. It really is strong. Morning Haze really gives you that sort of morning feel and the freshness to the start of a new day. Sort of thing you put on today. I mean, it's got a blue sky, you've got the lovely colours of autumn. I mean, I'm looking out here, I've got a tree that's got golden yellow leaves on one side and all the bronzy colours. Looks really pretty out there today. Love that thing. And then you got waterfalls. The delicate on the piano, the water coming down the waterfall. It really does add to its grace and beauty. The Spring. A song that's a piece of music that really gives you that first day of spring feel. Really love that. Quiet Valleys. I don't know if he's trying to get that thing when you're looking down a valley and there's quietness. Nature Trails does really give you the walk. You're walking through a forest. Really nice piece. And then Heather Carpets, just a really nice piece of album to end the album. I love this little trilogy he did of the Airs. Again, I have got these. I have got a lot of the piano stuff because I love it. Then the 1 minute I'm listening to Motorhead, and I'll put something like this on. So I'm going to give this an RTO ranking of 8 out of 10. Okay, then coming in at number 2, this is a sort of concept type album released in 1988. It's the 10th one, and it's called Time Machine. Rick Wakeman's on here. David Payton has worked with King Crimson and Fish. Tony Fernandez is back. Ashley Holt, who's done vocals before. John Knightsbridge on the guitar. John Parr, St. Omel's Fire, does the vocals. Mr. Roy Wood does vocals as well. Tracy Ackerman does vocals as well. First track is called Custer's Last Stand. This has got features Roy Wood on the vocals. I like this track. It's a good little rocker. Great vocal from Roy on that. Ocean City, a really good track. Great vocals from John Parr. He is a really good singer, John Parr. He's worked with Meatloaf as well. Angel of Time, really nice keyboards on this from Rick. The drums are good. The vocals from Tracy Ackerman a little bit weak, but on the whole it's a really strong track. Slave Man, I think this would be better as an instrumental. I don't like the vocal on it. Ice, really good track. Love Rick's keyboards in this. Swirl, some really nice swirls. Really good piece of prog music. Open Your Eyes, again, it's just very proggy in places. Some great keyboards on here. Great bass line on this one from Davey Payton, really strong. Then we get my favourite track called Elizabeth Rock. I just love the sort of vocalised keyboards. Really sort of sound. The drums are a little bit 80s, but it's a solid track. Really like that one. Make Me a Woman, not a bad track. Great vocal from Ashley Holt on that. Rock Age, this is again sung by John Parr. Very strong vocal. Really good way to end the album. Not a bad album this is. Okay, it's produced in the 80s, but I like the idea of it. It's a really good little concept that Rick had, and I do like listening to this one, so I'm going to give this an RTO ranking of 8.3. So my number one favourite album from Rick Wakeman during the 80s is released in 1981. It's the second album that he done in the 80s, and it's 1984. We've got Rick Wakeman on here, Steve Barnacle on Fender bass, Tim Stone on guitar, Tony Fernandez as ever on drums, Gary Barnacle on saxophone, Frank Ricotti on Ludwig drums, Chaka Khan's on here, Kenny Lynch, yes, that Kenny Lynch, Steve Harley, and Tim Rice and John Anderson all appear on this album. First is called 19 Overture Part 1. One of them typical overtures that you get from Rick's. If you go back to the Journey of the Centre of the Earth, it's full of that sort of sound. Dramatic start, really, really good. Then the Overture Part 2, which is a bit more heavy, great guitar work and some sort of church organ, really, really good. Then we get War Games. I like this. It was written by Tim Rice and Rick Wakeman and Chaka Khan. Now, Chaka Khan's vocal on this is really good. It's a superb track. All them elements that you get. It's a combination, I think, of stuff from King Arthur and the 6 Wives of Henry VIII and the Journey to the Centre of the Earth. Really, really good track. Then you get Julia. Nice piece of music. Again, great lyrics written by Tim Rice. And another strong vocal from Chaka Khan. Then we get a track on here called Him. My favourite track. It's got John Anderson singing on it. It's a very short track, but it is really, really nice. Great, great words again from Tim Rice. We've got a great singer singing it and some great keyboards from the Wizard. What more do you need? Then we get a track called The Room, brainwashing brackets. This is absolutely great. Hammond organ on here, absolutely brilliant. Then you got that traditional rock keyboard and Hammond, the technology of 1981, all working well together. Absolutely brilliant track. Then we got Robot Man. Interesting vocal here. It's done by Kenny Lynch. It's not, I mean, you expect associating with jazz, but it just worked quite well in this, what he does in that, so it's not a bad track. Sorry. Again, this is another track that could have come straight off the journey to the centre of the earth. I just wonder if this is sort of leftovers or ideas that he didn't use on that. It's a really nice piece of work. Some great piano from Rick. No Name. This features Steve Harley on the vocals. Great stuff. It's a great little rock track. Strong vocal from Steve Harley. Some elements of Rick Wakeman's wonderful keyboard and prog. Really strong track. Forgotten Memories. Again, I don't know if this is a throwback to the journey to the centre of the earth. It's got that feel to it that's just brought up to the 80s thing. Really, really good. Paroles, interesting, but I'm not quite sure who's singing on this, but it's so good. Then the title track, 1984. What I like about this, the drums are so basic, and it's got such great little bites of keyboard. Really pulls it together. It's a fantastic little piece of music. I think this is a really great little concept album from Rick Wakeman. Thrown in, you got Tim Rice writing the lyrics. Some really strong singers that sing the vocals. Very underrated album, I think. I think it's up there with these other concept albums. I play this a lot. Truly a great little album. So I'll give this one an RTO ranking of 8.5. Yeah, this has been a tough one to do. I mean, people have asked for it. It has been a hard one to do, and I think one of my subscribers put about, it's a big challenge to take on Rick Wakeman. It is. Next week will be the 90s. Now, the 90s was he put out so many albums. He put out a lot of reworkings and remixes. So next week will sort of be, it's going to be long because it's 30 odd albums, but we're not going to talk about them all because there's a lot of redoing and all sorts. But there's some interesting stuff from the 90s, just like the 80s. So I'll be back shortly. We've got a classic album for you, and we're going to look at one of Jane Addiction's albums as probably their best one, Ritual Dollar Habitual. Sorry about, I think I'm getting a cold, and when I get colds I start getting a sort of bit of a sore tongue, which is not very good. So I do apologise if my speech goes a bit off kilter this week. I'll be back later, so bye for now.